Hi, my name is Grant Funk. My wife Lena and I have been doing ministry together for a lot of years. The past 30 years, we've been in Western Alaska. We currently have 8 children, all of which are grown with families of their own, except our two youngest, which are 10 years old and 4 years old. We've had quite a few foster children over the years, and we also currently have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old that we are fostering. Our ministry has been in a remodeling stage for several years, so COVID was just one more step in that process. One of the frustrations of COVID for me is that I am doing this video right now instead of being somewhere in person. The need for us to remodel, though, whether in a building or a ministry, forces us to focus on what is important and what needs to change. Forced remodels, such as COVID, come with unexpected challenges. By the way, it's not just our country that this weird thing is happening. A missionary friend in Italy wrote that they have had to cancel most of their ministries that have in the past been very effective around holiday season. Another missionary family from a closed country lamented that the critical translation work that needs to be done has come to a standstill because they cannot get together with the people that they need to in order to accomplish their work. COVID frustrations are worldwide. I want to focus these few minutes on our attitude during these times. Those of us who are so used to personal connectedness in our group gatherings or visitation have had a difficult transition with the forced or cautious disconnectedness. How do we deal with these frustrations? I want us to walk away from this time with these two things in mind. Number one, God's plans have not thwarted, but yours might have to make radical adjustments. And number two, God's answer of no often carries us deeper in our relationship with Him than a yes. Please, we must at this time trust Him with what is going on in our remodel and our lives. So, point one, challenges to our life are often the catalyst needed to move us where we need to be. This is the time when we consider that God's plans are not thwarted, but mine have been. Consider Jesus' directives to his followers in Acts 1:8. But you will receive power when the Holy Spirit has come upon you, and you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Jesus laid it out for them as to what it would be like in the years to come. They were going to be the witnesses for Jesus Christ to the world. Yet for the next 8 chapters in the book of Acts, we find this little phrase repeated: in Jerusalem. The church in Jerusalem. In Jerusalem, over and over and over again. That wasn't the mandate. The mandate was to get into the world, to get out beyond Jerusalem, to get out beyond culture, to get out beyond our language, and to get into areas and people and places to be a witness for Jesus Christ. There are growing pains and outside pressures on the church in Jerusalem are there, but it is still in Jerusalem. In Acts chapter 7, one of the great church leaders, Stephen, is martyred. Acts chapter 8, verse 1 says this: At that time, a great persecution broke out against the church, which was at Jerusalem. Still at Jerusalem. What does it take sometimes to move us into a place of remodel? It takes difficult circumstances. And this was an extremely difficult circumstance as this persecution heated up. And it pushed a relatively comfortable church existence in Jerusalem out. It was disrupted through persecution, and they were scattered to all areas. Acts 1:8 was being fulfilled. By the way, you'll find an interesting statement concerning this scattered church in Acts 11:26. As some believers, it says, began reaching across cultural norms. Most people were Jewish, going to Jewish people. But again, just getting into a region isn't working in the region with the people. And this group of people decided this message is for everyone. And they began to share Christ with other people groups. It says this interesting statement: and the disciples were first called Christians in Antioch. Perhaps that is the case because for the first time there was a multicultural group worshiping God together. What did their remodel look like? Persecution. Perhaps that's in our future as well. But perhaps in our COVID frustration, our racially divided world, our politically ridiculous world, there's a personal calling to remodel our lives and to get more into step with what God is doing at this time in history, in our communities and in the world. As one popular song of the past says, your world's not falling apart, it's falling into place. Our personal remodel has allowed us to utilize technology such as Zoom to reach out to several people that are geographically distant with some great times of Bible study. It's been incredible. I'd never used Zoom before. And I'm learning and I'm growing in my understanding of Zoom and how to utilize it as a technology that we can reach out to people that I've wanted to see for years and could not get to, and now I can. Never thought of any of the technologies until the COVID restrictions came on. Free conferencing calls has opened up a door to a dozen or so getting together for mutual encouragement and growth. These are missionaries and other villages in the state, as well as some lower 48 individuals who have come together to be encouraged and to grow together and to find answers and hope in a time of crisis. There are several more radical changes in our personal remodel, but it's an exciting time to get out of our Jerusalem and into the world with the good news of Jesus Christ through modern technology and other means. Point number 2, my personal experience is that there have been, in 2020, more no's than yeses to my prayers. So much of 2020 has been spent thinking my prayers are just bouncing off the ceiling. Nothing's happening. Why aren't you answering my prayers, God? Well, I read Habakkuk, a small book tucked away toward the end of the Old Testament. It's written in the form of a dialogue between Habakkuk and God. It's a really good read. It's only 3 chapters long, which is about 2.5 pages in most Bibles. He sets the stage of this great book with these words as he looks around in Habakkuk 1, 2 through 4. He says, God, I'm looking around. I'm crying out to you. I'm crying out violence, but you don't save. We're looking at riots. Is God not stopping the riots? What about the people whose businesses are being closed and the people who are dying or the people who are sick or the people who are in isolation? Just like Habakkuk, and you'll need to go read chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. But just like Habakkuk, people all around are being treated unjustly. And it's a hard time. It's difficult to watch. And Habakkuk's crying out to God and saying, God, please do something. Basically, what Habakkuk says in those few verses is, God, I am praying and you're not answering. But God responds with an answer that shocks Habakkuk. And some of God's answers to our prayers this year, 2020, have been shocking. God's response is, I am answering. I am working. And he actually says, look around, Habakkuk. Look on the international scene, Habakkuk, and you'll see what I'm doing. I am raising up the Babylonian army to come into this land as my hand of judgment. So God's response is, I am answering you, Habakkuk. This is what I'm doing. Habakkuk's response goes on to say, basically, I don't like your answer, God. He says things like, oh God, sir, you can't look on evil. You're asking an evil people to come in here and be your hand of judgment against a people less evil than they are. I don't like your answer, God. God's response to Habakkuk is one that has echoed through history. He said, write it down, Habakkuk. It's going to happen. The just will live by his faith. This is echoed in Romans and Galatians and Hebrews. In other words, God is saying, Habakkuk, look around and trust me. Habakkuk is shocked. He's got to look around. He is looking around and he's seeing what's happening. And God's just saying, his answer is, you're just going to have to deal with it, Habakkuk. Trust me, the just will live by his faith. This is the verse that woke up Martin Luther to begin the Reformation, as he realized our calling is a calling of a life by faith. That's what our relationship with God is. It's a deep relationship of trust. in the Creator God of the universe. We're wired for relationship, and in this relationship, we've got to trust. So the next chapter or so, Habakkuk takes some time to look at who God is, and then makes one of the greatest statements of faith in the entire Bible. Though the fig tree shall not blossom, and there be no fruit on the vines, though the olive should not yield its fruit, though the flocks will be cut off, I will still trust in you. You make my feet like deer's feet and make me to walk on my high places. But preceding that statement is an interesting thing. He says words of emotion, like I looked and I saw what God is doing and I trembled inside. My bones felt rot moving into them. I'm shaking like a leaf. I am scared to death emotionally of what God is about to do. Yet I will trust him. I challenge you to go read Habakkuk. Roadblocks in your life are also used to direct trails we take on our journey. In your personal remodel job, on your life and on your ministry, follow Habakkuk's lead. Look at the sovereignty of God and keep your focus there. Your emotions will catch up. We used to live in a treeless Alaskan West Coast area. Blizzards were unbelievable, and I mean unbelievable. They're indescribable. People sometimes would step outside of their house and get lost within 30 feet of their house. There were times when I left one trail marker behind before I was able to see the next trail marker on my snow machine journey to someplace. But I knew the trail was in the right direction, and I followed that direction, and it was very encouraging to see the next trail marker come into sight. That's the way we're living right now, one trail marker at a time. You continue to press on through this storm. The finish line may not be in sight, but it is up ahead. Keep pressing on. Be like a Habakkuk. Trust God. Don't let your emotions control your life. So in conclusion, the situations we're facing right now did not catch God off guard any more than the persecutions of Acts chapter 8 and following. We often need to be pushed out of our comfort zones to realize that we need to be on a rescue mission. There are others lost in this storm as well, and they need to be rescued. Conclusion number 2. At a time when emotions are running on high octane, don't let them take the steering wheel of your life. Strap them in the back seat and keep them there. Join Habakkuk and look at who God is and trust him. Quite a few years ago in a coastal village where we lived, a blizzard hit while there was a high school basketball game going on in a neighboring village. The elders of that village said for everyone to stay for the night. The blizzard was too bad, but people thought, well, we'll just get in groups and follow each other, and I'll follow the person in front and we'll get home. So against the advice of the elders, a large group of people set out that night, and the blizzard was so bad you could not see the tail light of the snow machine in front of you, and eventually everyone was scattered out all over the tundra, in little groups or by themselves, lost because they could no longer remain connected to the snow machine in front of them. The storm raged throughout the night. There were 80 people lost on the tundra that night. The next day, or that night, that very night, search and rescue teams began going out into the storm. These were people who knew how to do their job. They weren't just people out, okay, I'll give this a try. They knew what they were doing. They had read the Habakkuk of their time. They knew they could trust what they knew to find these people, and they spent 24 hours rounding up 80 people lost on the tundra. No one's life was lost. Some had frostbite, but not bad. We didn't medevac anyone out. What an incredible story. We need to be like that. We too are on a life and death rescue mission, even during the current storms of our time. Eternity is at stake. Go where God leads and rescue those who are lost. Get the training you need to do so. Become, during this storm of our time, a rescuer on the trails of life.